The Arkansas Traveler. A cheerful tune played on dusty porches and small-town fairs, the sound of laughter, whiskey, and summer nights long gone. To most Americans, it's just an old fiddle song, a harmless echo from the past. But behind its joyful melody lies something unsettling. The story it tells isn't about humor or hospitality, it's about a man who lost his way and never came back. If you love uncovering the dark meanings behind forgotten tales, make sure to subscribe now and join us, because tonight, the melody hides a truth that has been ignored for more than a century. As we peel back the layers of this legend, we'll find that the traveler's laughter wasn't joy, it was denial. The fiddler's smile wasn't kindness, it was a warning. And that simple road through Arkansas wasn't just a path through the woods, it was a mirror. A mirror reflecting everyone who has ever thought they could outsmart their fate. Because once you hear the Arkansas Traveler, you start to wonder. Was it really just a song, or a confession that never ended? The violin's melody begins soft and playful, the Arkansas Traveler, a cheerful tune that once filled taverns and farms with laughter. It's the sound of a simpler America, or so people like to believe. The story behind it was light-hearted. A well-dressed traveler lost on a dirt road meets a rugged farmer in a broken cabin. The traveler asks for directions, but the farmer answers every question with dry humor and riddles. Listeners always laugh, imagining the stranger's frustration. But beneath that laughter, there's a strange echo, a note that doesn't quite belong, a smile that lingers too long. As the narrator retells the scene, something feels wrong. The traveler's horse refuses to move, the sun never fully sets, and the farmer's eyes don't blink. The dialogue that once sounded funny begins to twist into unease. "You lost, stranger?" the old man asks, bow scraping his violin. The same question repeats like a chant, too deliberate to be a joke. What once felt like a harmless encounter now seems like a test, one the traveler doesn't realize he's already failing. The cheerful fiddle tune becomes slower, warped by the wind. The traveler laughs nervously, not knowing why. The cabin's shadows stretch longer, and the farmer's voice grows distant. "Play along," he says, "and maybe you'll find your way home." The violin plays again, the same melody, but something in it feels alive. Each note sounds like it's calling out from somewhere else, somewhere beneath the soil. Then silence. The laughter fades, replaced by a low hum, as if the air itself remembers something forgotten. Locals once said the tune carried good fortune, but they never mentioned how it ends. No one ever tells what happens to the traveler after the song stops. Perhaps no one ever asked. Perhaps no one wanted to know. The story that was supposed to make people smile begins to feel like a warning. The fiddler grin, the traveler's confusion, the melody that never ends, all point towards something older and darker hiding behind that road. And maybe, the real question isn't who the traveler met, but why he never found his way home. In the mid-1800s, Arkansas was a land of cracked soil and quiet desperation. The Civil War had left scars not only on the earth but on every soul who walked it. Roads were long, muddy, and empty, stretching between dying towns where laughter was a luxury few could afford. It was here that the story of the traveler was born, not as a joke, but as a mirror held up to a wounded nation. The educated man from the city symbolized progress, the farmer stood for stubborn poverty, and their dialogue was a conversation America was having with itself. The legend spread through taverns and traveling shows, always played with humor, always ending in applause. But beneath the laughter hid something cruel. The song mocked the man who could not find his way home, turning his confusion into a melody. It was said the earliest version of the Arkansas Traveler came from a real fiddler, a man who wandered too far, never to return. His name was lost, his story buried under folklore. Yet some swore the tune first appeared after his disappearance, echoing through the valleys as if the road itself remembered him. Old archives in Little Rock still keep a forgotten newspaper clipping. The paper is yellowed, the ink half erased, but one line stands out: local fiddler found dead by the roadside, violin scorched beyond recognition. Locals said lightning had struck, but others whispered that no storm had passed that week. When people tried to play his burned violin, they said it still carried the same melody, faint, hollow, but alive. That's when travelers began to report hearing the tune long before they reached the next town, always from somewhere behind them. By the late 19th century, the song had transformed into a cultural trophy. Politicians used it in campaigns, theaters turned it into comedy. The meaning shifted from tragedy to laughter, as if the country itself wanted to forget where it came from. But some musicians refused to play it after sunset. They claimed that if you played the full tune in one sitting, you'd dream of the road, and wake up hearing footsteps in the dark. Most dismissed it as superstition. Still, no one ever performed the entire song twice. So, was the traveler ever real? Or was he a memory stitched into a song, forced to repeat his last journey forever? The more you trace the legend, the more it unravels, until only one truth remains: someone wrote that tune for a reason. And maybe, just maybe, it wasn't meant to be heard at all. They say one version of the story never made it into the books. It was passed down in whispers by travelers who swore they had heard the song far from any town, echoing from deep within the woods. In that forgotten version, the traveler wasn't lost by accident, he was drawn to the road by the tune itself. The melody seemed to call him, promising shelter and warmth. As the sun dipped behind the hills, he saw a cabin at the edge of the trees, its windows glowing faintly like eyes in the dusk. A man sat on the porch, bow in hand, smiling as if he had been waiting for company all along. The traveler dismounted and approached. The air smelled of rain, though the sky was clear. "Evening, friend," he said, but the fiddler didn't answer. He simply raised the bow and began to play. The sound was unlike anything the traveler had heard, the same cheerful melody, but slowed to a crawl, each note dragging behind the next like a chain. When the man finally spoke, his words were soft and broken. "Been a long time since someone found this road." His eyes were hollow, his face pale as candle wax. Yet, when the traveler blinked, he looked young again, as if time itself couldn't decide who he was. Inside the cabin, the air was heavy. Dust floated like ash, and the walls seemed to breathe. The traveler looked around: no family, no food, just empty chairs circling the fireplace. The fiddler gestured to one. "Sit," he said, "and play if you know the tune." The traveler laughed nervously, claiming he didn't. The fiddler smiled wider. "Everyone does, once they've been here long enough." The violin screeched as if alive, and something beneath the floorboards moved with the rhythm. The man's laughter cracked into silence. Outside, the wind carried the same melody, but it came from everywhere, and nowhere. The traveler tried to leave, but each door led back to the same room. The windows showed the same trees, the same road, the same fading light. When he ran outside, the cabin waited ahead again, identical, unchanged, eternal. The fiddler voice followed him through the fog: "Play the tune, and you'll understand." He finally raised the bow and played the melody himself, and as the notes echoed, he saw himself sitting on the porch, smiling, welcoming another traveler from the road. Some versions end there. Others say he's still there, playing the same song, waiting for someone to listen. Either way, no one ever found the road again. The place vanished from every map, though the melody survived, a cheerful tune with no beginning and no end. Perhaps that's why the song never truly fades. Maybe, once you hear it, a part of you stays on that road too. Every story that survives carries a shadow, a meaning hidden beneath what we choose to laugh at. The tale of the Arkansas traveler was never just about directions or a lost man on a road. It was about the danger of arrogance, the blindness of those who think they know the way. The traveler represents intellect without humility, logic without heart. The fiddler, silent and mocking, becomes the embodiment of patience, or judgment. When he plays, he doesn't entertain, he reminds. Each note is a mirror, forcing the listener to confront the paths they've taken and the ones they've ignored. In the old folklore, roads always meant more than geography. They symbolized the journey of the soul, every turn a decision, every dead end a consequence. The traveler, trapped in his loop, wasn't punished by an external force but by his own refusal to listen. The cabin wasn't a house, it was a mind that could no longer move forward. The endless song, then, becomes something deeply human, the cycle of guilt that repeats when we deny our failures. That's why the melody never stops, because guilt never dies easily. Even the violin holds its own meaning. In some interpretations, it's the voice of memory, bending truth until it fits our comfort. In others, it's the heartbeat of the traveler himself, stretched between confession and denial. The scorched violin found by the road was more than an instrument, it was the symbol of what happens when pride meets consequence. Each burnt string told the same story: some truths are too loud to be silenced, even by death. And maybe that's why, when people play the tune today, they can't help but feel watched. Every century seems to bring its own traveler, someone convinced they can outsmart the road. And every generation rewrites the melody, softening its edges, making it safe again. Yet, each new version carries the same hidden pulse, the same warning disguised as joy. We are drawn to the cheerful because it helps us forget the horror beneath. But the fiddle remembers. It always remembers. That's why some say the song changes slightly each time it's played, as if someone unseen were tuning it from the other side. Maybe the Arkansas Traveler was never about Arkansas at all. Maybe it's about us, our stubbornness, our denial, our refusal to see the signs on the road until it's too late. The fiddler isn't a ghost, he's the reflection waiting in our silence. The melody, looping forever, isn't a curse. It's a reminder. And the question that remains isn't what happened to the traveler, but how many of us are already lost in our own endless tune. Some say the traveler's song still drifts across the Arkansas hills on quiet nights, faint, hollow, and oddly joyful. But once you know what it means, that joy feels like mockery. The Arkansas Traveler wasn't written to make people smile, it was written to remember something, or someone, that refused to be forgotten. The melody was a map of regret, a confession disguised as a tune. Every repetition of that song was a plea to be heard, a man's last attempt to make sense of his wandering before it consumed him. And maybe that's why the road never ends, because remorse, like music, repeats until it's understood. The traveler was never a hero or a fool. He was everyone who believes they can master the unknown. The fiddler wasn't his enemy, he was the voice of consequence, patient, unyielding, eternal. When the traveler took the bow, he didn't just play the song, he became part of it. That's why every generation hears it differently, why the rhythm changes slightly, as if new hands keep rewriting the same sin. The melody evolves, but the meaning never does. It still asks the same question: have you learned? Or will you walk the same road again? Legends don't survive because they're true. They survive because they keep us awake. The Arkansas Traveler reminds us that laughter often hides sorrow, and that sometimes, a cheerful song is just a mask over something too painful to name. The road, the tune, the fiddler, they are pieces of the same story, a man who couldn't let go and a truth that refused to die. That's why the song outlived its origin. It doesn't belong to the past anymore. It belongs to anyone who listens closely enough to hear what others ignore. If you ever find yourself driving alone through the back roads of Arkansas, and the radio crackles with an old fiddle tune, don't change the station. Just listen. Count the notes. Because somewhere, between 1 and 2, the bow might pause, waiting for you to answer. That's the moment when the melody becomes yours. And once it does, it never really stops. It just waits for the next traveler who thinks the road will lead him home. Next time you hear that cheerful tune, listen closely, you might not be alone.